So next we're gonna do our layer of mountains. We're gonna do a pale color, and we want them to get darker as they move down towards us, closer to us. This is called atmospheric perspective, and it means that things get darker as they get closer to us. So I'm going to mix a blue, you can have blue mountains, purple mountains. I'm gonna have blue and a little, oops, I did a lot of black there. So I'm just gonna add more water, kind of gray mountains, maybe a little bit of brown. And I'm adding water because I want it to be pretty light to start. And I'm gonna go right up against that line I have there. And I want my mountains to look darker towards the top and have them kind of fade. So I'm gonna go back and add a little bit more color just to the edge of my mountains. So I'm painting those in, and then I'm going to make my color slightly darker. I'm going to add a little bit more blue and a little bit more brown. Just a touch, just make it a little bit darker. And I'm going to go on my edge there, just a little bit darker. And then I'm going to use this same color in my next layer as well. Okay, now I want to fade it down. So I'm going to dry off my brush, and I'm going to blend in that watercolor. And I want to make sure it's totally dry before I do my next layer. So I can work where it's dry already. Now my mountains are getting closer, so I want them to be more detailed. So I'm going to start to see even more jagged edges as it gets closer. So more jagged. I'm going to show you a way that I can paint so it starts to look like maybe even we see trees on top of our mountains. So a jaggeder edge. Here I'm starting with my darker color. And what you can do too, if you want to make it look very jagged, is kind of put your brush to the side and go up and down. Oh. So up and down like a tree line. We're going to be doing that in our next layer for sure. So the only problem you'll have here is if it starts to bleed into our previous section. You need to make sure you are working on dry paper. Otherwise, our mountain will bleed into our previous mountain, and that won't look good. Also notice that this one is slightly darker. So my colors are getting a little bit darker. We want our mountains to get darker as they get closer to us. So I'm taking that color now, and I'm pushing it down with my brush. You can add a little bit of water. You don't want to add too much because then you got to wait for it to dry. Or you can just push it down. If you have a lot of color and a lot of water and you want to push it all the way down your paper, you can too. You just got to wait for it to dry. No problem. So here we have the darker color along the top, fading down. And we want to make sure we allow this to totally dry before we move on to our next step, which is going to be more of a tree line area.